Ma'am, the cleaning staff entrance is around the back. I'm here for the executive board meeting.
Security! Remove her immediately!
I don't think so. My name is Amara Brooks, founder and majority owner of TitanSphere Technologies. Your badges have just been deactivated, and you're all fired.
Welcome to Story with Black, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button.
The security cameras caught every second of it. A quiet woman walked into the lobby of one of the biggest technology companies in the country and stood at the front desk, waiting to be noticed. Nobody looked at her. Employees walked past like she was invisible. The receptionist glanced up, let out a small laugh and looked back down at her screen. Somewhere behind the glass walls, an operations director gave a cold order. Keep her away from the executive floor. Someone else, half joking, half serious, said maybe they should just call the police. Nobody in that lobby knew what was about to happen. Exactly 6 minutes later, every elevator in the building stopped moving. Every executive badge went dark at the same time, as if the whole company had been switched off. And the same woman they had just humiliated walked calmly into the boardroom, holding a sealed envelope that was about to end careers, expose a conspiracy worth almost $1 billion, and reveal a secret that not one person in that building had ever bothered to learn. She owned the company. 5 years before that morning, a young engineer named Amara Brooks built something the world had never seen. Working out of a small rented office with her business partner, Michael Grant, she created the artificial intelligence platform that would become TitanSphere Technologies. Amara was the one who wrote the first lines of code. Michael was the one who believed in her before anyone else did. Together they built a company that grew faster than either of them expected, until it became one of the most valuable technology firms in the country. Then, without warning, Michael died of a heart attack in his sleep. Amara was left holding a company that suddenly felt too heavy to carry alone. Her mother's health was failing at the same time, and grief pulled her away from the office she had built with her own hands. She stepped back from daily operations, trusting the executive team Michael had personally chosen to protect everything they had created together. She believed the people at the top understood the values the company was founded on. She had no idea how wrong she was. 4 years, Amara poured her energy into her mother and into a charity foundation that funded young engineers who looked like she once did, kids from neighborhoods nobody expected to produce billionaires. She still owned the majority of TitanSphere. She still had every legal right to walk back into that building whenever she wanted. But she trusted her team, and trust, she would soon learn, can be the most dangerous thing a founder ever gives away. The package arrived on a quiet afternoon with no return address and no name attached. Inside were board meeting transcripts that had never been shared with her, hidden financial statements, and deleted emails someone had risked everything to recover. Amara sat at her kitchen table and read every page twice, her hands growing colder with each line. The current CEO, Charles Whitmore, and the company's CFO, Stephen Ross, had spent nearly 2 years building a secret plan. They had quietly created shell companies overseas. They were preparing to strip TitanSphere of its most valuable asset, the artificial intelligence platform Amara herself had designed, and transfer the patents to a foreign buyer. Once the technology was gone, they planned to let the company collapse, walk away with more than $800 million between them, and leave thousands of employees and investors holding nothing but broken promises. The board of directors knew nothing. The employees who showed up every single day proud to work there knew even less. Amara closed the folder and sat in silence for a long time, staring at nothing, feeling something inside her chest turn to steel. She did not call a lawyer that night. She did not send an angry email or schedule an emergency board meeting. Instead, she made a decision that surprised even her. She would go back to the company herself, quietly, without warning anyone, and see the truth with her own eyes before she did anything else. The next morning she chose a simple navy business suit, no jewelry, no designer handbag, no assistant trailing behind her. She wanted to walk into that building as an ordinary visitor, a stranger nobody would recognize, because she needed one answer before she made her next move. Had the company she built with Michael forgotten everything it once stood for? There was only one way to find out, and it meant becoming invisible in her own empire. The lobby of TitanSphere Technologies was massive, all glass and steel, with a giant company logo glowing above the front desk. Amara stepped inside and walked up to the receptionist with a calm, polite smile. She asked to speak with someone from the executive office. The receptionist barely looked up. She glanced at Amara's simple clothes, made a quick judgment, and asked if she was there for the cleaning position. Amara felt something tighten in her stomach, but she stayed calm and explained again gently that she needed to speak to someone on the executive floor. The receptionist rolled her eyes and told her to take a seat, saying executives do not meet with walk-ins. A few employees walking past slowed down just enough to stare, whispering to each other that she was probably at the wrong building. Nobody offered to help. Nobody asked her name. An operations manager appeared, took one look at her, and repeated the same order in a sharper tone. Sit down and wait. Amara did not argue. She did not raise her voice. She simply nodded, thanked them, and walked to the waiting area, sitting down like any other stranger who had been told her presence did not matter. Quietly, without anyone noticing, she started the timer on her watch. 6 minutes. That was all it took for Amara to see everything she needed to see. She watched a nervous young job applicant get snapped at by a manager who clearly enjoyed making people feel small. She watched 2 executives walk straight past an elderly visitor struggling with a heavy box, neither one bothering to hold the door. She watched employees roll their eyes at a delivery driver, refusing to sign for a package unless he waited in the exact right spot, as if his time meant nothing at all. A young woman in a wrinkled interview suit sat 2 chairs away, hands shaking in her lap, whispering to herself that she needed this job to pay her mother's medical bills. Nobody at the front desk had even offered her a glass of water. Charles Whitmore stood at the head of the table, smiling, presenting numbers to the board that Amara knew from the documents in her bag were completely fake. He spoke about an upcoming sale, some board members nodding along, having no idea they were being lied to by the man they trusted most. Amara sat perfectly still, watching her own company being stolen right in front of her, piece by piece, while the very people meant to protect it clapped politely for the thief. By the 6th minute she understood something she could never unknow. This was not a company that simply needed new rules or a friendly reminder about kindness. This was a company that needed a new heart, a new leader, and it needed one immediately. Amara stood up. She did not wait for permission. She did not glance at the receptionist who had dismissed her or the manager who had ordered her to sit down like a misbehaving child. She walked straight toward the boardroom doors, her footsteps steady and unhurried, while voices behind her rose in confusion, someone calling out for her to stop, someone else shouting for security. She pushed the doors open and stepped inside. Charles froze mid-sentence. His eyes narrowed as he demanded to know who let her in, ordering security to remove her immediately. The board members turned in their chairs, confused, unsure whether to laugh or panic. Then an elderly woman near the end of the table, the longest-serving board secretary in the company's history, went completely pale. She had seen this face before 15 years ago, in an old photograph pinned above a much smaller, much humbler office. Her hand flew to her mouth, and she whispered so quietly that only the people closest to her could hear it. "Oh no. They have made the biggest mistake of their lives." Amara walked to the head of the table, right past Charles, and calmly placed 3 items in front of her. Her original shareholder's certificate. The company's founding charter, signed the very first week TitanSphere existed. And her identification. The room fell into a silence so heavy it felt like the air itself had stopped moving. She looked around at every stunned face and introduced herself, slowly and clearly, as the founder and majority owner of TitanSphere Technologies. Several executives turned as pale as the woman who had recognized her first. Others simply stared, realizing with growing horror that they had built entire careers inside a company whose actual owner they had never once bothered to meet. Charles recovered his voice first, his tone sharp and defensive. He told her she no longer had any operational authority, that the board answered to him now, not to some absent founder who had disappeared for years. He reminded the room, almost desperately, that Amara had not set foot in the building in nearly 2 years, that she had signed away day-to-day control the moment she walked away to care for her mother. His voice cracked slightly on the last word, and for a brief second, Amara almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then she remembered the forged numbers still glowing on the screen behind him, numbers meant to hide $800 million stolen from people who trusted him with their futures. Any pity she felt disappeared as quickly as it had come. Amara allowed herself a small, calm smile, the kind of smile that made the temperature in the room drop even lower. She told him he was wrong. She had never lost that authority. Years earlier, before Michael passed away, the 2 of them had quietly written an emergency governance clause into the company's private legal structure, a clause almost nobody else had ever read. It stated that if fraud or betrayal ever threatened the company from the inside, full executive power would automatically return to the majority owner, no vote required, no delay allowed. Her lawyers, already standing by outside, activated the clause the moment she gave the signal. Within seconds, every single executive access badge in the building went dark. The elevators stopped between floors. Security guards who once took orders from Charles now stood quietly waiting for instructions from Amara instead. She turned to the massive screen mounted on the boardroom wall and, with one calm word to her legal team, began projecting the evidence for everyone to see. Hidden offshore accounts filled with money that should have belonged to the company. Records of secret bribery payments disguised as consulting fees. Audio recordings that captured private conversations no one thought would ever be heard outside that office. Deleted emails, quietly recovered by forensic investigators weeks earlier, appeared one after another on the screen, each one worse than the last. The board members sat frozen, watching their own trusted leadership unravel in real time, the scale of the betrayal far larger and far darker than anyone in that room had ever imagined. Amara did not raise her voice once. She simply gave the order. Charles Whitmore, Stephen Ross, and every executive named in the documents were terminated on the spot, effective immediately. Downstairs, federal investigators who had been quietly waiting in unmarked cars for over an hour walked through the front doors with search warrants in hand. Computers were seized from private offices. Doors were sealed with yellow tape. 2 executives were escorted out in handcuffs, their faces blank with disbelief, while stunned employees pressed against the lobby windows, watching the people who had run their company for years being led away like strangers. In the middle of all that chaos, one person stood frozen near the front desk, tears sliding down her face. It was the same receptionist who had laughed at Amara less than an hour earlier, the same young woman who had assumed she was there for a cleaning job. She was certain she was about to lose everything. Amara walked over to her and instead of firing her on the spot, she asked one quiet question. Have you treated every visitor who walks through that door this way, or only the ones who look like me? The receptionist opened her mouth to defend herself, but no words came out, because deep down she already knew the honest answer. She admitted, through tears, that she judged people by how they looked the moment they walked in, every single day without even realizing she was doing it. Amara nodded slowly and told her something she would never forget. The company's biggest failure was never really about stolen money or fake financial reports. Its biggest failure was a culture that decided a person's worth before it ever bothered to learn their name. In the weeks that followed, Amara did something none of the old executives had ever done. She personally sat down and talked with employees at every level of the company, from the security guards in the lobby to the engineers hidden away in the back offices. She found honest managers who had been ignored and passed over for years and gave them the promotions they had earned long ago. She found young engineers with brilliant ideas who had never been given a real chance and finally opened the door for them. She even reached out to former employees who had quit years earlier because they could no longer stand the toxic environment, inviting them back to help rebuild something better. Slowly, piece by piece, the values that Amara and Michael had once built the company on, innovation, honesty, and equal opportunity for everyone, began to return. 1 month later, TitanSphere's stock reached a record high, and the criminal investigation into Charles Whitmore and his allies continued to grow, with several former executives now facing serious fraud and conspiracy charges. At the main entrance of the building, workers installed a new bronze plaque, and every single person who walked through those doors from that day forward would see it. It read, "Every person who enters this building deserves dignity before judgment." Beneath those words were 2 names carved into the metal: Amara Brooks and Michael Grant. As Amara walked out of the building that evening, a young intern hurried after her, stopping her right at the door. The intern's voice shook slightly as she spoke. "Because of your story," she said, "I finally believe I belong here." Amara smiled and looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Then promise me something," she said gently. "When you are finally sitting in that corner office one day, never make another person feel invisible. Great companies are never built by power alone. They are built by people who choose to truly see each other." The intern nodded, blinking back tears of her own, and Amara stepped into the elevator. This time, as the doors slid closed, every single person in that lobby knew exactly who she was. But even as the elevator carried her upward, Amara's phone buzzed once in her pocket. A new message from a number she did not recognize lit up the screen. Just 5 words stared back at her in the dark glass. Michael's death was not natural. The doors opened onto her floor, and Amara stood frozen in the empty hallway, the sealed envelope from that morning still resting in her bag, and a much older, much darker question now beginning to open in her mind. If Michael had not simply died in his sleep, then someone inside TitanSphere had known the truth for 5 long years. And they had let her grieve alone.